Allen was originally due his first main event since he was with the LFA back in 2019, and that was supposed to be this month against Jack Hermansson, but almost as soon as it was announced, it was gone. It fizzled away. And so on May the 1st, it was announced that Bruno Silva would be stepping in to take on Brendan Allen in a 3-round atmosphere. So pretty well a full camp for both of these guys. Get ready for it. And for Bruno Silva, wiped away all of those worries that you had about him when he fought Gerald Meerschaert 2 fights ago and looked absolutely gassed and terrible when he showed up with a goatee and no hair on top of his head. He tried to look like Brazilian Walter White. And he looked like he took Brazilian Walter White's stuff because he looked terrible in that matchup. In the 3rd round, he gets dropped by a right hand. He gets submitted, and it's an awful ending for Bruno Silva. So many people down on him coming into the fight against Brad Tavares, where he showed up to show out and got the 1st-round knockout win over Tavares. So now, all of a sudden, Brendan Allen putting his shiny record, his shiny ranking on the line, a 4-fight win streak for Allen. And if you consider it in this matchup, I mean, Bruno Silva's one of those guys. Can he strike in a little bit of a Dricus du Plessis blitz like he did against Jordan Wright? He could. Can he be the reserve guy? He could. But Silva's last time out against Brad Tavares started the fight out of southpaw, which is interesting because Brendan Allen in the UFC is 7-0 against southpaws. Some people might not think about that one. 7-0 against lefties. Silva typically an orthodox fighter, and I would hazard a guess to say that Silva fights out of orthodox to start this one. But when you look at this fight, Matt, Silva's good on the ground. We don't see it that often. We saw it against Wellington Turman, who's also on this card, so that's got to be awkward when they see each other in the halls this week. But for Silva, he gets his bread buttered with his striking. For Brendan Allen, was known as a grappler, but his striking's progressed so well at Killcliff. You've seen it really level up as things have gone on. And in his last time out in an impromptu main event against Andrei Muniz, because Nikita Krylov couldn't make the walk against Ryan Spann, Brendan Allen looked amazing in that fight, was really able to defend takedowns, work in his grappling, work in his striking, and get the finish win over Muniz. And it was one of those ones where Muniz submitted Jacare, and Allen submitted Muniz. So is now Allen the grappling king of 185 pounds?
It's not how sports work, but it is fun to think about it like that. And that's been the thing about Brendan Allen. Like, you're right. The grappling, the wrestling is what got him to the dance. He was one of those original kind of gained a lot of stock in a loss when he first came into the UFC because he did pretty well against Kyle Dawkins. Or other way around, sorry. Kyle Dawkins did surprisingly well against him. But that was the thing about Brendan Allen. He has got into some of those 50-50 grappling exchanges against guys like Kevin Holland, even though he was able to win out. But for Allen, he's so physically strong in some of those positions. That's why I'll be curious to see where and when Silva can have success with his own grappling, because Silva's a guy who does really good with his defensive submissions, right? He's got a great guillotine. He can do really well with some of those spots, and those are things that make Brendan Allen uncomfortable. Allen's at his best, like you said, when he's fighting like he did against Andrei Muniz, when he's mixing his boxing in with his wrestling, with his own grappling. When he is an MMA fighter, there are few guys who can mix their martial arts as well as he does in the middleweight division, but Bruno Silva is such an outlier with some of his strikes. He could land a massive strike at any point of this fight and hurt a guy like Brendan Allen. But the biggest gain I do think Allen's made in his striking since going to Killcliff isn't just his overall striking. It's the kicks to the body. He throws great body kicks now, and I do think they help him open up a large portion of his game, because at first it was good boxing, good wrestling. Now he has a bit more of an answer at that middle range, at that long range, and I do think it's really helped him open up his game.
Good cardio for Brendan Allen. Questionable cardio for Bruno Silva, because you saw him be the hammer for 2 rounds against PFL's El Dierte, Andrew Sanchez, former Ultimate Fighter winner. And then Silva rallies back in the 3rd round. Both guys are tired, but Silva ends up throwing that good combination. Crazy
Carries
flurry.
His power late.
Gets the knockout win. So for Bruno Silva in this one, it'll be interesting to see which version we get. I do hazard to guess, or I do think that was an anomaly that we saw against Gerald Meerschaert, because a lot of people said that Pereira took the soul of Silva, and that's what we saw, but that wasn't really the case. So I disagree with folks out there. When it comes down to this matchup, Matt, Allen is slightly favored in the matchup. We have picked him in some fights. We picked against him in some fights, but he's won more than he's lost with the UFC. Have a look at the Tapology votes to get a look at what the fans are thinking on this one. I'm going to say over under 70% Allen in the matchup.
I'll say over.
I'm going to say over, and it is over. So 670 total votes, 81% Allen, 68% by submission for the 19% that have Silva, 87% by knockout. And again, we've seen Allen struggle when he fought against Chris Curtis. We saw him struggle when he fought against Sean Strickland as well, the Extreme Couture guys. Can Bruno Silva carry things over with the striking that way? We'll find out if he's able to clip with some of those shots. Allen looked good against Curtis at the start. he really did struggle in the back foot when he was fighting Sean Strickland. And Silva's one of those pressure type of fighters. We're meeting chest to chest and we're throwing down. So I think this is going to be a really fun fight and a tough one to offer up a pick on for me.
Just because, again, Silva's one of these fighters who can end the fight at any moment. But I got to be honest, that Gerald Mearshart fight, it might be an anomaly, but it still happened. You know, like, that doesn't happen to every fighter where they get dropped by a guy who's not this great striker, who's not really even in his prime anymore. Like, that's a bad loss. Even if you don't want to buy all the way into it, it still happened and you still have to bring it up. So for Silva, if Gerald Mearshart can do it, I do think Brendan Allen can hurt him on the feet. I don't think Brendan Allen's not going to be able to do that at all. I picked against Brendan Allen against Andrea Muniz, though, and I was really impressed by his overall game plan that time out. I thought he was really able to mix all of his skill set together. I think he'll be able to do the same in this one.
I like Allen in this one because of the fight that I referenced earlier, the Andrew Sanchez fight, where it was a lot of the wrestling that had success. Now, that's a JUCO All-American. That's a guy that ended up training at TriStar in Canada. It's pretty cool there for Andrew Sanchez. The PFL run, not very good. But if you look at it for Allen, I like that. I like the kicks to the body. I like the fact that he has the attacks that can slow down a guy like Silva. But if you remember Bruno Silva, I mean, he was supposed to come into the UFC. Some USADA complications before he did. But go watch his fight against Artem Frolov, who I thought was all the hotness and was going to be in the UFC at some point. So Matt, both of us in the matchup going with all in Brendan Allen to pick up the win. Let us know down below in the comment section who you have in this matchup. And if we look forward, Matt, David Onama's fighting Gabriel Santos next. You are not going to want to miss it. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, we always say.
Let's get into it.